All right. Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Thursday, September 9th, 2021. This is your evening tropical update. We approach the peak of the hurricane season, and boy, we got a lot going on here, not just in the Atlantic Basin, but the whole northern hemisphere. Very active this evening in the Atlantic. We have two active storms. One still big old Hurricane Larry now pulling away from Bermuda, moving northward. We have what was Tropical Storm Mindy, quickly moved across Florida and Georgia last night, has exited offshore. It should be dissipating probably as early as the 11 p.m. advisory tonight. And then we have two other active areas of interest by the National Hurricane Center, a tropical wave down in the Western Caribbean. That's going to move into the southern Gulf of Mexico in a couple days, could threaten Texas. We have another one you can see at the corner of your screen starting to come off. This big old guy is going to move over the Cabo Verde Islands, could produce some tropical storm hurricane conditions there. And then we have yet another tropical wave in the central Atlantic, not officially marked, but one we're keeping an eye on as well. So we're going to cover all this. Then we're going to jump across the pond and tell you about the Pacific. So it's going to be a lot crammed in this video, so we'll try to keep it as short as we can. And we'll start with our two active storms. Again, Larry, Mindy, not too far from each other. We'll start with Larry. Maximum sustained winds 90 miles an hour tonight. Larry is winding down, but like it's a big storm. I mean, this thing is it's a big old storm. You can see Bermuda right here under tropical storm warning earlier. Conditions are quickly improving as Larry is beginning to race away to the north at about 21 miles per hour. System again still packing winds 90 miles an hour. Pretty healthy Category 1 hurricane. And this is going to move over the southern tip of Newfoundland tomorrow afternoon, tomorrow night, and really into Saturday morning. Hurricane warnings in effect for the southeastern part of the island. The micromanaging the track is still important. The further north Larry gets on this cone, the more people get a pretty nasty wind. Most of the nasty wind is going to be right on Larry's right side, just to the right or to the east of that core of strongest wind. So that's where those hurricane warnings are in effect, and it's going to be pretty nasty where that comes ashore. And then you're going to have some rain on the other side of the system. And then Larry will race away, become extratropical by Saturday night. And Larry's journey that spanned almost 2 weeks ends as an extratropical storm that's going to dump several feet of snow over Greenland. So quite a journey comes to a close for a big old tropical storm that didn't really bother anybody until now, and is going to close its chapter. All right, we're going to move over to Mindy. Not much left to talk about with this one. Again, Mindy came ashore as a 45-mile-an-hour tropical storm last night near Apalachicola, Florida. It moved across southern Georgia and exited offshore. There was some heavy rain reported along its track, some gusty winds back across Florida. A little bit of stuff going on. There was actually an eye starting to form right before the system made landfall, so Mindy would have probably been a hurricane if she had another, 12 to 24 hours over warm water. Thankfully, the storm got ashore, and tonight Mindy is pretty ragged looking, has pretty much been absorbed by a cold front, kind of stretched up through here, and not much left of circulation, just a little bit of convection to the north and a very ragged circulation, almost an open trough at this point. Hurricane Center likely to go ahead and declare this post-tropical sooner than later. So those are our two active storms. Not much to talk about with them, but we do have a couple waves to talk about as well. The Hurricane Center tonight has a 40% chance of development on our Caribbean wave and a 70% chance of development on our wave out by Africa. We'll start with our Caribbean wave and visible satellite turning to infrared this evening. You can see the bend in the winds here right around Central America. Definite tropical wave axis right here. And this is all slowly going to move off to the west for the next few days, and by early next week all this will be in the Bay of Campeche, where there's already a surface trough kind of hanging out with strong upper level winds and a high that's going to relax in a couple days. So a lot of strong winds still in this region, so you're not going to get any tropical activity in the short term. But as this comes across the Yucatan and settles up, kind of what Mindy did. Mindy did the same thing. She came up, but then she got caught by that cold front and turned away. Well, the weather pattern will be a little bit different over the region, and what you're instead going to see is high pressure is going to be more in control over Florida and the Bahamas, and this time she's going to get pushed back off to the west. So the question with this one is, wherever this develops down here, if it does develop, what develops, where exactly, and where does it go? Because you can see on this satellite presentation, there's a pretty good surface trough here. So this all kind of merges together, and what the GFS is showing us next week is a big mess, basically. So we'll go ahead and fast forward into Monday. You can see, again, a pretty broad, elongated surface trough here. And what the GFS does is it shows development down in the southern part and the northern part. And this is a common thing the GFS does on broad wave envelopes. It likes to develop two different storms, kind of spit them out away from each other. I think the Euro's got a little bit better solution here. Again, same thing. This is Saturday, and Sunday it has a little low trying to develop down here in the southern edge of the Bay of Campeche, and then that kind of crawls up the coast Monday into into Tuesday. Now that's a definite possibility, having something that just kind of rakes the coastline. Again, you can see high pressure and control with the general clockwise flow, something like this. That's going to cause the system to want to move up the coastline in that kind of fashion. GFS, kind of a little bit different story. It shows, again, two little circulation areas trying to form up force vorticity up here and then again down here, and then kind of splits those off. But then by Monday, Tuesday, it has some kind of surface coastal trough going on here, at least some kind of disturbance at the coastline. So the bottom line is that there is increasing potential for some kind of tropical system to landfall somewhere in Texas. This is another one we talked about for a while. GFS showed a hurricane for a couple days moving through here, and then it backed off. We said, around the 14th or so, 14th or 17th, this sort of region had some kind of chance for tropical impact, and it's looking a little bit more likely now something's going to come out of this. And the big thing, whether this is really organized or not, this region is very susceptible to heavy rainfall events. This is not going to be moving terribly fast, and it's going to have a lot of time over water. It's going to have a lot of onshore flow. Rainfall total is looking pretty impressive already. European anomaly for precipitation looks like you could be talking about anywhere from 5 to 10 inches of rain, if not more. And slow-moving tropical systems with persistent onshore flow in East Texas is a recipe for some of the wettest systems in United States history. So I'm not saying this one's going to be necessarily historical, but I want to remind people that it does not need to be a Category 2 or 3 or 4 hurricane to get really impactful weather events, especially in eastern Texas, and this could be one of them. So we're going to watch this carefully, but again, we are expecting this to drift across the Yucatan and Central America, again to the Bay of Campeche early next week, and by the middle of the week, some kind of tropical system may be trying to form and move northward towards Texas or possibly even western Louisiana. I wouldn't want to take y'all out of it completely, but it looks like high pressure is going to push most of this towards Mexico and Texas. And again, something could really form up and just kind of move into Mexico, and it could spare most of Texas. It's too early to really define anything, but the bottom line is that some system could be a threat to Texas early next week. All right, so we've also got our other player tonight, our wave coming off of Africa, highlighted in red here, and we're just going to go back to the big satellite for this one. It's really too early to talk about this too much. A wave just now starting to come off of Africa. You can barely see it coming off your screen here. This will develop in a couple days, and it will pull northward. And the question from there is, does it recurve or does it try to go back to the west? Historically, systems that form as soon as they leave Africa have a very high probability of moving offshore. Larry was one of those that formed early and then it went up and out to sea. It's very hard for a storm to form up here, but then never find a path to move northward. So good indication that's going to do so. The evening models, both the European and GFS, will start with the European. The European mostly shows something trying to eventually recurve or at least pull pretty far north early. And also the European does have a lot of ensemble members showing weak low pressure moving into Texas. So for our other systems, something to keep an eye on. GFS, not a soul, but the GFS actually shows the system coming up and then recurving back to the southwest and back down towards the main development region. And if it does so, it may find some time to move further south, and it could be an issue if it comes off to the west too far. So this is one to watch, but it is, again, far too early to determine, and it is several thousand miles away. So we have a while to watch anything that may or may not come out of that region. So that's the latest on all the named things on the Hurricane Center's map. Now, there's one more wave I wanted to mention. This is this wave right here in the Central Atlantic Basin. Not very impressive right now. Some upper-level winds are kind of hostile. It's got some outflow issues from Larry. It's in a fairly dry environment. The wave isn't very impressive right now, hence why it's not on the Hurricane Center's map yet. But this wave is generally going to move off to the west-northwest, and it looks like it's going to put itself somewhere near the Bahamas going into the 7 to 10 day window. We can see this again on the GFS. We'll just use this one as example. I will move it through here, and I'm going to push it out to the middle of next week. And by the middle of next week, a pretty pronounced inverted trough or tropical trough is out here in the central or the western Atlantic, somewhere near the Bahamas. Now, the European, I think, shows something similar Tuesday into Wednesday. Okay, yeah, it's almost in the same spot, not as pronounced. But any kind of tropical wave getting into this region this time of year is something we have to watch very carefully. If conditions do improve for this wave, it could come across Florida. It could move north in North Carolina. Just something getting into this part of the Bahamas this time of year is a definite something you have to keep an eye on. So this wave may be a bit more silent and maybe not something that gets picked up on as much, but it is one to watch as we go into next week as well. So we'll have the tropical wave that's moving into the Gulf, and we'll also have to keep an eye on something like this. Again, not a lot of model support, not a lot of stuff in NHC yet, but is something to keep an eye on. All right, let's go ahead and wrap up with the rest of your tropics. We start in the Eastern Pacific with Hurricane Olaf quickly strengthened yesterday. Was a tropical storm yesterday. Today is a hurricane. Maximum sustained winds 90 miles an hour. Hurricane warning set for most of the southern Baja Peninsula, and the system making landfall in the next couple of hours. Not moving particularly fast. So this thing's going to be wreaking havoc on them through tomorrow afternoon, and then even into Saturday before this finally pulls away from the Baja Peninsula. It could definitely be an issue for them. And Josh Morgan is iCyclone on Twitter. He's been chasing this. He took off at the last minute, and 27 minutes ago he reported, full-on hurricane conditions in the southern Baja Peninsula. He's no doubt as close to this as he can possibly get. He's probably right here on the southern tip, if I had to guess. But my man's out there doing the work and definitely reporting some pretty serious conditions from Olaf. So this will move off and then dissipate not long after that. And in the Western Pacific, we have our two tropical storms we've been talking about. Tropical Storm Kunsan has moved away from the Philippines. This one will move in and make landfall in the Vietnam region in a couple days, likely as a decent typhoon, but it should be weakening on the final approach to the coastline. And our other typhoon, super typhoon Shanthu, still a very powerful storm. Maximum sustained winds 120 knots, about 140 miles an hour tonight. Category 4 equivalent on the Saffir-Simpson scale. The system has undergone an eyewall replacement. It's a little bit bigger tonight. The forecast track has changed pretty significantly. The old forecast track took this across the northern Philippines between Taiwan and into the China coast. And now the slower forward pace has kind of caused the storm to turn more. And now we expect the system to begin to turn northward and basically chop Taiwan in half and then move up very close to China's coast, but then it should recurve away and could actually become a threat to Japan and Korea. So Shanthu skipping no port calls as it moves around this region and basically is going to give everybody something, it appears. System also very strong. We're talking about the potential for re-strengthening 125 knots by the Joint Typhoon Warning Center in a day or so as the eye is clearing out, and as long as it stays offshore the Philippines, likely to re-intensify and could become a Category 5 again. Still forecast a weekend before landfall in Taiwan, but we'll see out here with that kind of warm water and fairly good conditions. Hopefully some southwest wind shear is going to help this thing weaken a little bit, but could be a very powerful typhoon impacting Taiwan in a couple of days, likely Saturday or Sunday. So we'll hopefully have this thing come down a little bit before then, but we'll see. So that's your tropical update tonight, guys. A lot going on. Sorry for the late record. We'll have a more, try to get a little more earlier out this weekend, but overall a lot to watch and peak of the season. So stay safe and thanks for watching and have a good one.